Police humiliates black teen. At the restaurant, unaware that his father is the most powerful billionaire CEO. It starts as a simple dinner until a police officer points at a quiet black teen and accuses him in front of everyone. The boy stays calm. His mother stays silent. But the damage is done. What the officer doesn't know is that every second is being recorded. And that footage lands on the desk of the most powerful CEO in the world. When the billionaire presses play, his blood runs cold. Because the boy being humiliated looks exactly like him. He abandoned that child years ago to protect his empire. Now the truth is back, on camera. Will he bury the evidence to save his power, or expose everything and finally face his son? Tell me in the comments where you're watching from right now, and if this story speaks to you, make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one. The late afternoon sun caught the edges of downtown's glass towers, turning them bronze. Ava Carter's feet ached in a familiar way, the kind of ache that came from 8 hours pushing a housekeeping cart through carpeted hallways. She adjusted the strap of her purse and glanced at her son. Hugo walked beside her with his hands in his pockets, his grocery store polo still smelling faintly of produce and floor cleaner. He was taller than her now, had been for 2 years, but he still had that same quiet way of moving through the world, like he was trying not to take up too much space. "You didn't have to do this, Ma," Hugo said softly. "It's your birthday." Ava's voice was gentle but firm. 17 years ago today, God gave me the greatest gift I've ever received. We're celebrating. Hugo smiled, the kind of smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "I know money's tight. Money's always tight." She reached over and squeezed his shoulder. "That doesn't mean we don't celebrate the important things." They turned onto Maple Street, where Maria's family restaurant sat wedged between a dry cleaner and a tax preparation office. The brick facade was weathered, and the hand-painted sign had faded, but golden light spilled from the windows, warm and inviting. Hugo held the door open for his mother. A small bell chimed above them. The restaurant was modest, checkered tablecloths, mismatched chairs, framed photographs of the owner's family covering one wall. The smell of garlic and tomato sauce filled the air. Only 3 other tables were occupied, an elderly couple sharing pasta, a woman reading while she ate alone, and 2 construction workers still in their work boots. Maria herself, a stout woman in her 60s with flour on her apron, greeted them with a warm smile. "Ava, and the birthday boy." "Hi, Miss Maria," Hugo said quietly. "I have your favorite table ready, by the window." Maria led them to a corner booth and placed 2 worn menus in front of them. "I'll bring water." Ava slid into the booth and immediately bowed her head. Her lips moved, silently. Hugo waited, hands folded on the table, until she finished. "Thank you, Lord, for another year with my son." She whispered, "Amen. Amen." Hugo echoed. Ava opened her menu, though she already knew what she'd order. She always got the same thing here. "What are you thinking?" "The chicken parm looks good." "Then get the chicken parm." She reached across the table and placed her hand over his. "Hugo, I need you to know something." He looked up, meeting her eyes. "You are a good young man. You work hard. You respect people. You help those veterans every week without asking for anything in return." Her voice was steady, but her eyes glistened. "I am so proud of who you're becoming." Hugo's throat tightened. "Ma, I know the world doesn't always see you the way I do. I know it's not always fair." She squeezed his hand. "But God sees you, and I see you. Don't ever forget your worth." Hugo nodded, not trusting himself to speak. Maria returned with water and took their orders. As she walked away, Hugo looked out the window at the darkening street. People hurried past, workers heading home, A jogger with earbuds, a family with a stroller. He didn't notice the police cruiser pulling up across the street. Ava opened her napkin and placed it in her lap. "Tell me about work today. Anything interesting?" Mrs. Patterson came in again, the one who always asks me to reach the top shelf. The sweet lady with the cats? Yeah, she brought me cookies. Hugo smiled. Oatmeal raisin. Did you save me one? Of course. They talked quietly, comfortably, the way they always did. The restaurant hummed around them with soft conversation and clinking silverware. The elderly couple paid their bill and left. The woman closed her book. Ava glanced at the clock on the wall. Their food would be out soon. Neither of them saw the uniformed officer enter the restaurant, his hand resting casually on his belt as his eyes swept the room and settled, lingered on their table. Officer Daniel Reeves stood inside the entrance of Maria's family restaurant, his radio crackling softly on his shoulder. He'd come to meet Jenkins for a quick dinner before the night shift, but Jenkins wasn't here yet. His gaze drifted across the restaurant, settling on the booth by the window. The teenager sat with his back to the wall, relaxed, talking to the woman across from him. Black kid, maybe 16 or 17. Nice clothes. Too nice for this neighborhood. The woman looked tired, working class. Didn't match. Reeves's instincts kicked in, the ones developed over 15 years of patrol work. Something felt off. The kid glanced towards the door, and their eyes met briefly before Hugo looked away. That look, was it nervousness? Guilt? Reeves didn't check with Maria at the counter, didn't ask if there'd been any problems. He simply walked toward the booth, his boots heavy on the tile floor. "Excuse me." Ava looked up first. Hugo followed her gaze. The officer stood beside their table, one hand on his belt, the other resting near his radio. His badge caught the overhead light. "I need to ask you a few questions." "Questions?" Ava's voice was calm, but her hand tightened around her water glass. Reeves focused on Hugo. "You planning to pay for your meal?" Hugo blinked. "What?" "Simple question, son. You planning to pay?" "Yes, sir." Hugo's voice was quiet, steady. "My mom already paid." "Is that right?" Reeves's tone suggested he didn't believe it. "Mind standing up for me?" The restaurant had gone quiet. The construction workers at the far table were watching. The woman with the book had stopped reading. "Officer," Ava began. "Ma'am, I'm talking to him." Reeves kept his eyes on Hugo. "Stand up, please." Hugo looked at his mother. She gave him the smallest nod, the same one she'd given him 100 times before. Stay calm, stay respectful, stay safe. Hugo slid out of the booth and stood, his hands visible at his sides. "Empty your pockets." "Officer, there's been some mistake," Ava said, her voice still controlled but firmer now. "I paid for our meal when we arrived. You can ask—" "I'm not asking you, ma'am. I'm asking him." Reeves gestured at Hugo's pockets. "Empty them. Now." Hugo's jaw tightened, but he complied. He pulled out his phone, his wallet, a few dollars in crumpled bills, and a keychain. He placed each item on the table. "Open the wallet." Hugo's hands were steady as he opened it. Inside was his school ID, a debit card with his name on it, and $12. Reeves picked up the wallet, examined the ID. "Hugo Carter, 17. "Yes, sir." "Where do you work?" "Morton's Grocery, on 5th Street. "And you're here celebrating what exactly?" "My birthday," Hugo said quietly. One of the construction workers muttered something to his companion. The woman with the book had her phone out now, recording. "Officer, please." Ava stood up, keeping her movements slow and deliberate. "I paid for this meal in advance. You can verify that with the owner. There's no reason—" "Ma'am, sit down." "I will not sit down while you humiliate my son." Her voice didn't rise, but something in it commanded attention. "He has done nothing wrong. Reeves's jaw tightened. "I've seen plenty of kids come in here, order food, then walk out. It's called dine and dash." "We haven't even received our food yet," Ivor said evenly. "That's beside the point." "Then what is the point?" The words came out before Hugo could stop them. The restaurant held its breath. Reeves turned fully to Hugo, his posture shifting. "Excuse me?" "Hugo!" Ava's voice was a warning. But Hugo was tired. Tired of being careful, tired of being watched, tired of having to prove he belonged everywhere he went. "I'm sitting here with my mother on my birthday," Hugo said, his voice low but clear. "We ordered food. She paid in advance. I haven't broken any laws, so I'm asking respectfully, sir. What is the point?" The silence stretched. Reeves's hand moved to his radio. "I'm going to need you to provide proof of payment before—" "Is there a problem here?" Maria had appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron. Her eyes were sharp, her mouth set in a hard line. "Ma'am, this is police business," Reeves said. "This is my restaurant." Maria moved to Ava's side. "And this woman paid for her meal 30 minutes ago, in full, plus tip." Reeves stared at her. "So unless you have another reason for harassing my customers, officer, I suggest you leave them alone." The room was absolutely still. Even the kitchen had gone quiet. Reeves looked from Maria to Hugo to Ava. His radio crackled. Someone was calling his unit number. "My mistake," he said flatly. He didn't apologize. He simply turned and walked towards the door, his boots echoing across the tile. The bell chimed as he left. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Maria placed a hand on Ava's shoulder. "Your food will be right out. On the house." "Maria, no! On the house!" Maria repeated firmly. She looked at Hugo, her expression soft with sympathy. "Happy birthday, mijo." She walked back to the kitchen. Slowly, conversation resumed in the restaurant. The construction workers went back to their meal. The woman lowered her phone. Hugo sat down. His hands were shaking. Ivor slid back into the booth across from him. She reached for his hand, held it tight. "You did good," she whispered. "You stayed calm. You were respectful." Hugo nodded, but he couldn't speak. His throat was too tight, his chest too full of everything he couldn't say. Through the window, he could see the police cruiser still parked across the street. The night air was cool as Ava unlocked their aging Honda Civic in the restaurant's small parking lot. Hugo walked beside her, silent. His untouched leftovers sat in a foam container under his arm. They hadn't finished their meal. After the officer left, neither of them had any appetite. Maria had insisted on boxing everything up, squeezing Ava's hand and refusing payment. Ava started the engine. The dashboard lights illuminated Hugo's face, drawn, distant. "Hugo." He didn't respond. "Baby, look at me." Slowly, he turned his head. "You didn't do anything wrong." Hugo's laugh was bitter, quiet. "I know that, Ma. Then why do you look like you're carrying the weight of the world?" "Because—" He stopped, swallowed. "Because knowing doesn't change what happened. Doesn't change how everyone in that restaurant looked at me. Like I was a criminal. Like I was about to run." "They weren't all looking at you that way." "Enough of them were." Ava's hands tightened on the steering wheel. She wanted to argue, to comfort, to make it better. But she couldn't lie to him. Not about this. "It's not fair," she said quietly. "No, it's not." She pulled out of the parking lot onto the dark street. Streetlights cast long shadows. A few blocks away she could see the blue and red lights of a patrol car stopped at an intersection. Hugo turned away, staring out the window. They drove in silence for several minutes, the radio off, just the hum of tires on asphalt and the occasional rattle from the old engine. Ava's mind raced. She thought about the hundreds of conversations she'd had with Hugo over the years, The careful lessons about staying safe, keeping his hands visible, never raising his voice with police, always being respectful even when disrespected. She'd taught him how to survive in a world that would judge him before knowing him. And tonight, he'd done everything right. And it still wasn't enough. Her faith had always been her anchor. Through poverty, through abandonment, through every hardship, she'd held on to the belief that God saw them, knew them, loved them. But tonight, that faith felt thin as paper. "Lord," she whispered, her voice so quiet Hugo might not have heard. "I don't understand. I've tried to raise him right. I've taught him your ways, and still—" Her voice broke. Hugo's head turned slightly. He'd heard. Ava pulled into their apartment complex parking lot, a cluster of 2-story buildings with peeling paint and chain-link fences. She parked in their assigned spot and killed the engine. For a moment, neither of them moved. "Ma," Hugo said finally. "It's okay. It's not okay. I mean, I'm okay. I'm here. Nothing happened." Ava closed her eyes. This time. The words hung between them, heavy with all the unspoken fears they both carried. Hugo reached over and squeezed his mother's hand. "I'm going to be fine." She wanted to believe him. God, how she wanted to believe him. They got out of the car and walked toward their apartment. First floor, Unit 3B. The hallway smelled like someone's cooking and old carpet. Ava's keys jingled as she unlocked the door. Inside, their home was small but immaculate. Everything in its place. A worn couch, a small TV, photos on every surface. Hugo at every age, smiling. "You want me to heat up your food?" Ava asked. "I'm not hungry." "You should eat something." "Ma." Hugo set the container on the kitchen counter. "I'm just going to go to bed." She wanted to protest, to keep him close, to somehow fix what had been broken tonight. But she could see the exhaustion in his eyes. Not physical tired, but something deeper. "Okay," she said softly. "I love you. Love you too." Hugo walked to his room and closed the door quietly. Ava stood alone in the kitchen, her purse still on her shoulder, her coat still on. Through the thin walls, she could hear their neighbor's TV, a couple arguing upstairs, a dog barking in the distance. She moved to the window and looked out at the parking lot. The sodium lights cast everything in sickly orange. A police cruiser rolled past slowly, its spotlight sweeping across the buildings. Ava's hand went to the small cross she wore around her neck, the one her grandmother had given her. "I'm trying to trust you," she whispered into the darkness. "But I'm scared. I'm so scared for him." No answer came. She stood there for a long time, watching the empty street, her reflection ghost-like in the glass. A tired woman in a housekeeper's uniform, still wearing her coat, still gripping her purse, still trying to believe that morning would bring something better than this. Officer Daniel Reeves sat at his desk in the precinct's second-floor bullpen, the fluorescent lights humming overhead. It was 11:47 p.m. The night shift was settling in, dispatch chatter, someone's radio playing low, the smell of burnt coffee and industrial cleaner. He logged into the department's body cam upload system, a routine he'd done 1,000 times. The interface was clunky, designed by the lowest bidder, but functional enough. His bodycam had been recording during the restaurant incident. Protocol required all interactions to be uploaded within 24 hours. Reeves clicked through the menu, selected the file timestamp from 6:34 p.m. to 6:51 p.m. and titled it, "Welfare Check, Maria's Restaurant, No Arrest." He added a brief note in the description field. Responded to suspicious activity. Subject complied. No further action needed. Then he hit upload. The progress bar crawled across the screen. 17 minutes of footage. He drummed his fingers on the desk, thinking about Jenkins never showing up for dinner about the look in that kid's eyes, about the way the whole situation had turned sideways. Upload complete. Reeves logged off, grabbed his jacket, and headed out for patrol. He never thought about the footage again. 300 miles away, in a climate-controlled server facility the size of an airplane hangar, something stirred. The Atlas Global Ethics Monitoring System, a proprietary AI designed to analyze law enforcement interactions for patterns of misconduct, received the uploaded footage at 12:03 a.m. It sat in a queue with 847 other files from police departments across 6 states that had contracted with Atlas Global. At 2:47 a.m., the system began processing. The AI had no emotions, no opinions, no fatigue. It simply analyzed data against its parameters. Racial demographics of subjects involved, legal justification for contact, duration of interaction, escalation patterns, language used, compliance of subject versus officer response, historical patterns from the same officer. The algorithm passed the restaurant footage in 4.3 seconds. Subject: black male, minor, 17. Officer: Reeves, Daniel, badge NUT 2847. Justification for contact: none documented payment status, verified prior to interaction, subject compliance, 100% officer aggression index, 7.2, elevated. Probable cause: absent racial profiling indicators, present, confidence, 94.6%. The system cross-referenced Officer Reeves's personnel file. Pattern analysis: previous flagged incidents, 6 pattern detected, disproportionate stops of black males, ages 15-25, in public spaces escalation, increasing over 18-month period department response, minimal verbal counseling only. The AI made its determination in milliseconds. Recommendation: executive escalation required. The file was automatically moved to a secure queue marked with a red priority flag and tagged for CEO review. Lucas Whitmore had personally designed this feature, ensuring that patterns of repeated misconduct, especially those ignored by local oversight, reached the highest level of the company. The system generated a notification email, scheduled for delivery at 6 a.m. Eastern Time, when Lucas typically began his workday. In the dark server room, cooling fans hummed. Light flickered across endless rows of processors. The AI had no concept of irony, no awareness that the man who created it had once abandoned his own son to protect his empire. It simply flagged the case and waited. Lucas Whitmore's penthouse office occupied the entire 42nd floor of Atlas Global's headquarters building. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view of the city skyline still dark in the pre-dawn hours. The only light came from his desk lamp and the soft glow of multiple monitors. He'd been awake since 4:30 a.m. That was normal. He typically slept 5 hours, ran 6 miles on the treadmill in his private gym, showered, and was at his desk by 5:45. This morning was no different. Lucas scrolled through his emails with practiced efficiency. Market reports, quarterly projections, meeting requests from executives who knew better than to waste his time. He deleted most without reading past the subject line. At 6:03 a.m., a new email arrived with a red flag icon. Subject: Ethics System, Pattern Alert, Executive Review Required. Lucas opened it. The email was sparse, generated by the AI. High confidence pattern of misconduct detected. Officer: Reeves, Daniel, badge 02847, Riverside PD. Incident date: yesterday's date. Recommendation: review footage and consider contract suspension pending investigation. Attached was the body cam file. Lucas clicked it without hesitation. This was part of his routine. He personally reviewed every case the AI escalated to his level. Most required 15 seconds of his attention. Sign off on the recommendation, forward to legal, move on. The video player opened. The bodycam perspective was slightly fish-eyed, head level. Lucas watched Officer Reeves enter the restaurant, scan the room, and focus on a booth by the window. The camera advanced toward the booth. 2 people sat there. A woman, middle-aged, black, wearing what looked like a hotel uniform. And across from her, Lucas's hand froze on the mouse. A teenage boy, black, maybe 17, high cheekbones, thoughtful eyes, the kind of quiet dignity that came from being raised well. "Excuse me." The officer's voice came through the bodycam audio. Lucas barely heard it. He was staring at the boy's face. "You planning to pay for your meal?" The resemblance was impossible, undeniable. The shape of the eyes, the line of the jaw, even the way the boy held himself. Still contained, thoughtful. Lucas's chest tightened. "Yes, sir, my mom already paid." "Mom." The camera turned slightly, capturing the woman's face more clearly. Lucas's breath stopped. Iva, 18 years older, tired. Her hair pulled back, lines around her eyes that hadn't been there before, but unmistakably her. "Mind standing up for me?" Lucas watched the scene unfold. The accusation, the humiliation, the boy standing with his hands visible, emptying his pockets while his mother tried to intervene with the kind of controlled dignity that broke something in Lucas's chest. He watched his son, being treated like a criminal for sitting in a restaurant on his birthday. The video continued. The restaurant owner intervened. The officer left. The timestamp showed 17 minutes and 42 seconds total. The video ended. Lucas sat motionless in his chair, the city beginning to brighten behind him. 18 years ago. Lucas had been 30 years old, brilliant, relentless, on the verge of his first major breakthrough. Atlas Global was still just an idea, a series of algorithms he'd been developing in his MIT dorm room, then in a rented office with 3 folding tables and a coffee maker that barely worked. He'd met Ava at a community tech workshop he'd volunteered to teach, partly for resume padding, partly because his advisor said it would look good for grant applications. She'd been 24, working 2 jobs, taking night classes, and somehow still managing to smile like she'd found something in the world worth protecting. They'd talked after class. Then they'd talked again. Then they'd started meeting for coffee, for walks, for late-night conversations that stretched into early morning. Lucas had never felt that kind of connection before. Ava was real in a way nothing else in his life was. She challenged him, made him laugh, made him think about things beyond code and capital and competitive advantage, and then she told him she was pregnant. Lucas remembered the exact moment. Her apartment, small and neat, photos of her family on every surface. She'd held his hands and told him, her voice steady but her eyes uncertain. He remembered feeling the ground shift beneath him. "I need to think," he'd said. And he had thought. For 3 days he'd thought about nothing else. His investors were finally coming through. The contracts were being drawn up. Atlas Global would launch within 6 months if everything went perfectly. But everything had to be perfect. No distractions, no complications, no vulnerabilities. A child was a vulnerability. A relationship was a distraction. He'd convinced himself it was logical. Ava deserved better than a partner who would resent her for costing him his dream. The child deserved better than a father who would always be somewhere else, chasing the next algorithm, the next acquisition, the next billion. So he'd gone to her apartment one last time and told her he couldn't do this. "I'll send money," he'd said, "every month, whatever you need. But I can't be a father. Not now. Maybe not ever." Ava hadn't cried. She'd just looked at him with something like pity. "Keep your money, Lucas. We'll be fine without you." And they had been. He'd sent the checks anyway for the first year to a P.O. box. Everyone came back marked, "Return to sender." Eventually he stopped trying. Lucas stood abruptly, his chair rolling backward. He paced to the window, his reflection ghost-like in the dark glass. 17 years. The boy in that video was 17 years old. Hugo. The restaurant owner had called him Hugo. Lucas's son was named Hugo, and Lucas had never known, had never asked, had deliberately never looked back, because looking back would have meant acknowledging what he'd walked away from. He pressed his palm against the cool glass. Behind him, his computer screen still showed the frozen frame of the video, Hugo standing beside the booth, his mother's hand reaching for his, both of them trying to maintain their dignity while being publicly humiliated. Lucas had built an empire. He'd created systems to hold others accountable, to detect injustice, to enforce ethics at scale. And his own son had been profiled, accused, degraded in a restaurant on his birthday, while Lucas sat in his penthouse office, untouchable, unaware. The irony was so sharp it cut. "My God," Lucas whispered to his reflection. "What have I done?" The sun was rising now, light spilling across the city skyline, touching the tops of buildings. Lucas stood frozen at the window, a billionaire who'd just discovered he was poor in every way that mattered. Ava's alarm went off at 5:30 a.m. She silenced it immediately, not wanting the sound to wake Hugo through the thin walls. She lay in bed for a moment, staring at the ceiling. She hadn't slept well. Every time she'd closed her eyes, she'd seen that officer's face, heard Hugo's voice, quiet, respectful, humiliated. "You planning to pay for your meal?" She pushed the covers back and got up. In the bathroom, she splashed cold water on her face and studied herself in the mirror. 42 years old. When had the lines around her eyes gotten so deep? When had grey started threading through her temples? She thought about calling in sick to work, staying home with Hugo just to be close, to make sure he was okay. But they needed the money. The rent was due in a week, and her paycheck was already stretched thin. She dressed in her uniform, navy blue polo, khaki pants, sensible shoes. She pulled her hair back into a neat bun and clasped her grandmother's cross around her neck. By 6:15, she was in the kitchen making breakfast. Oatmeal, toast, orange juice. Hugo's door was still closed. Usually he was up by now, heading for the shower. But this morning, silence. Iva knocked gently. "Hugo, baby, you need to get up for school." No response. She knocked again. "Hugo, I'm up." His voice was muffled, flat. "I made breakfast. I'm not hungry." Iva's hand rested on the door. She wanted to open it, to sit, on the edge of his bed like she used to when he was small, to stroke his hair and tell him everything would be okay. But he was 17 now, almost a man, and she had to let him find his own way through this. "You need to eat something," she said gently. A long pause. Then, "Okay, I'll be out in a minute." Ava waited, listening to the sounds of him moving around, drawers opening, footsteps on the old carpet. When Hugo emerged, he was dressed for school, but his eyes were shadowed, his movements careful, like he was carrying something fragile inside him. They ate breakfast in near silence. "You don't have to go today if you don't want to," Ava said finally. Hugo looked up from his oatmeal. "I'm fine, Ma." "Hugo, I'm fine." His voice was firmer. "I'm not going to let him take anything else from me." Iva's throat tightened. She reached across the small table and took his hand. "You're the strongest person I know." Hugo's smile was sad. "I learned from the best." Lucas hadn't left his office. He'd stood at that window until the sun fully rose. Then he'd returned to his desk and opened a secure line to Atlas Global's private investigation division. "I need everything," he'd told the director. "Full background, discreetly. No flags, no alerts. Target is a minor, Hugo Carter, age 17, last known address Riverside area. I want school records, employment, associations, social media, family structure, everything. Timeline, 4 hours. Sir, for a comprehensive 4 hours." The director knew better than to argue with Lucas Whitmore. Now, at 10:47 a.m., the report appeared in Lucas's encrypted email. He opened it. Subject: Hugo Daniel Carter, Dobb. Yesterday's date: 17 years ago. Current address: Maplewood Apartments, Unit 3B, Riverside. Mother: Ava Marie Carter, 42. Hotel housekeeper, Howard Grand Hotel. Father: no information available, not listed on birth certificate. School: Riverside High School, junior year. GPA: 3.7. Employment: part-time, Morton's Grocery. Produce Department extracurricular, weekly volunteer, Riverside Veterans Community Center. Social media presence: minimal, private Instagram, infrequent posts. Criminal record: none. School disciplinary record: none. Financial status: household income, $34,000 year, estimated. The report continued for 37 pages. Lucas read every word. There were photographs. Hugo's school ID photo, serious, composed. A few social media screenshots showing Hugo at the Veterans Center, helping an elderly man with a tablet. Another of Hugo in his grocery store uniform, stocking shelves. One photo made Lucas's chest ache. Hugo and Ava together at what looked like a church picnic. Both smiling, Hugo's arm around his mother's shoulders. The way they looked at each other, the trust, the love, was everything Lucas had walked away from. The report included interviews conducted by the investigators, claiming to be from a scholarship foundation. Hugo: oh, that boy's a blessing. Comes every Thursday like clockwork, never misses. Patient as Job with these old grumps. He helped my Fred set up his email so he could talk to his granddaughter in Arizona. Dorothy Keene: Veterans Center volunteer. Solid kid. Shows up on time, works hard, never complains. Customers ask for him by name. Ahmad Hassan: Morton's grocery manager. Hugo's one of my best students. Thoughtful, asks good questions. He wrote a paper last semester about systemic inequality that was honestly college-level work. Jennifer Martinez, AP history teacher. Lucas scrolled to the final section. Current activities. Subject maintains regular schedule. School MF, 7:45 a.m., 2:30 p.m. Work MWF, 3 p.m., 7 p.m. Veterans Center Thursdays, 5 p.m., 8 p.m. Church Sundays, 10 a.m. Service with mother. Today was Thursday. Lucas checked his watch, 11:03 a.m. Hugo would be at school now. But tonight he'd be at the Veterans Center. Lucas stood and walked to his closet, where he kept several changes of clothes for late meetings and travel. He selected a modest outfit, khakis, a simple button-down, a plain jacket. Nothing expensive looking. His assistant's voice came through the intercom. Mr. Whitmore, you have the board meeting at 2. Cancel it. Sir, cancel everything for today. I'm going off-grid. A pause. His assistant had worked for him for 8 years and knew when not to ask questions. Understood, sir. Lucas looked at himself in the mirror. Even in plain clothes, he looked like what he was. Wealthy, powerful, accustomed to control. He'd have to do better than that. Before leaving, Lucas returned to his desk and opened the report one more time. He navigated to the folder of photographs and found the one he'd noticed earlier. Hugo at the Veterans Center, standing between 2 elderly men in military caps. Hugo was helping one of them with a smartphone, pointing at the screen, patient and engaged. The old man was smiling, really smiling, the kind of smile that came from genuine joy. Lucas enlarged the photo. His son looked happy, not performing, not posing, just genuinely present in that moment, helping someone who needed help, expecting nothing in return. Ava had raised him to be this. Everything good in that boy came from her values, her faith, her dignity. Lucas had contributed nothing but genetic material and absence. He sat back in his chair, looking out at the city below. Somewhere out there, Hugo was sitting in a classroom, trying to focus on algebra or literature or history, while yesterday's humiliation still burned. And tonight, he'd go volunteer at a veterans center, because that's who he was. Because even after being degraded in public, he'd still show up to help others. Lucas's hands clenched into fists on his desk. He'd walked away 17 years ago because he'd believed his empire was worth more than his son. Now his empire would help him find a way back. Even if Hugo never knew who he really was. The Riverside Veterans Community Center occupied a converted warehouse on the edge of downtown. Brick walls painted cream, a hand-painted sign over the door, a small parking lot with faded lines. Through the windows, warm light spilled onto the sidewalk. Hugo and Ava arrived at 4:55 p.m. in their aging Honda. Ava had insisted on driving him, though the center was only 15 minutes from their apartment. "You don't have to come in," Hugo said, unbuckling his seatbelt. "I know." Ava killed the engine. "But I want to." She hadn't been inside the center in months. Usually she just dropped Hugo off and ran errands, picking him up 3 hours later. But tonight, after everything that had happened, she needed to see him in a space where people valued him, where he was seen for who he truly was. They walked to the entrance together. Hugo held the door for his mother. Inside, the center hummed with activity. The main room was large and open, folding tables, mismatched chairs, a kitchenette in the corner, bulletin boards covered with photos and announcements. A dozen elderly veterans were scattered around the space. Some played cards. Others sat with laptops or tablets, frowning at screens. In the corner, 2 women worked on a jigsaw puzzle. "Hugo!" A booming voice came from near the coffee station. An elderly black man in a Marine Corps cap shuffled over, his cane tapping on the linoleum. This was Sergeant First Class Wallace Wally Green, 83 years old, Korean War veteran, and Hugo's biggest advocate. "Evening, Wally," Hugo said, his face brightening genuinely for the first time since yesterday. "Thought you might not show after—" Wally's voice dropped. "After what happened. Dorothy showed me the news. That officer had no right. I'm here," Hugo said simply. "I'm okay." Wally studied him with sharp eyes that had seen too much in too many places. "You sure about that, son?" Hugo's smile was small but real. "I'm working on it. That's all any of us can do." Wally turned to Ava. "Ms. Carter, good to see you." "Hello, Wally. Your boy's something special. You know that?" Ava's eyes shone. "I do." "Well, come on then." Wally gestured toward the tables. "Got a whole crew waiting for tech support." Lucas Whitmore stood across the street from the Veterans Center, partially obscured by a bus shelter. He wore the plain clothes from earlier, khakis, a modest jacket, a baseball cap pulled low. He'd parked his car 3 blocks away and walked. He felt ridiculous, a grown man, a billionaire CEO hiding behind a bus shelter to spy on his own son. But he couldn't stay away. Through the center's windows, he could see movement, people gathering. He checked his watch. 5:03 p.m. Hugo would be inside by now. Lucas crossed the street and approached the entrance. A small sign read, "Visitors welcome, all veterans and supporters." He took a breath and opened the door. Lucas stepped into warmth and noise, the smell of coffee and something baking. Voices overlapping. Laughter, gentle arguing about a card game, someone's frustrated muttering at a computer. A white-haired woman at a desk near the door looked up. "Can I help you?" Lucas had prepared for this. "I'm with the Stevens Foundation. We're considering a grant application from the center. Just doing some informal observation, if that's all right." The lie came easily. Too easily. The woman, her name tag read Dorothy, smiled warmly. "Of course. Let me get the director for you." "That's not necessary. I prefer to observe naturally. I'll just—" Lucas gestured vaguely toward the room. Well, make yourself at home. There's coffee in the corner, and Helen just brought banana bread. Thank you. Lucas moved into the space, trying to look casual, professional, forgettable. And then he saw him. Hugo sat at a table with 3 elderly veterans, 2 men and a woman. A laptop was open in front of them. Hugo was leaning forward, patient and engaged, pointing at something on the screen. Lucas found a seat against the wall, partially hidden behind a bulletin board, close enough to hear, but far enough to avoid attention. "Okay, Mr. Frank," Hugo was saying. "So you want to email your daughter the photos from your phone. First step is opening your email app." The elderly white man, Mr. Frank, squinted at his smartphone. "Which one's the email?" "The one that looks like an envelope. Right there." "This one. That's text messages, one to the left." Mr. Frank poked at the screen. "I'm telling you, Hugo, these things are designed to confuse old people." The woman at the table, wearing a Vietnam veteran's cap, laughed. "Frank, you landed planes on aircraft carriers. You can handle email." That was different. Those had real buttons. Hugo smiled patiently. "Okay, you've got it open. Now click Compose at the bottom." From his position against the wall, Lucas watched his son work. There was no frustration in Hugo's voice, no condescension, just infinite patience and genuine care. "Now type your daughter's email address in the to field." Hugo continued. Mr. Frank hunted and pecked at the screen keyboard. "This is taking forever." "Take your time. There's no rush." "You got somewhere to be?" Mr. Frank asked, glancing up. "Nowhere but here." Something in Lucas's chest twisted. Wally appeared at the table with a fresh cup of coffee. "How's the technology lesson going?" "We're getting there," Hugo said. "Mr. Frank's about to send his first photo email." "In this century?" The woman veteran grinned. "Hey now, Captain," Mr. Frank protested. "Respect your elders." "You're only 5 years older than me, Frank." The group laughed, easy and warm. Hugo pulled up the photo gallery on Mr. Frank's phone. "Okay, now click the photo you want to send." Mr. Frank scrolled through his photos. Grandchildren, a golden retriever, a sunset over water. "This one. My granddaughter's birthday last month." "Perfect. Now click the share button, the little box with the arrow." "Where?" Hugo leaned closer. "Bottom left corner. Son, I can't see that small." Without hesitation, Hugo stood and moved around the table, so Mr. Frank didn't have to crane his neck. He knelt beside the old man's chair, pointing at the screen. "Right here. You see it now?" Lucas watched his son kneel on the floor to make an elderly stranger more comfortable. Ava had taught him that, to serve without expecting recognition, to make others' dignity more important than his own comfort. Lucas had taught him nothing. After 40 minutes, Dorothy announced a break. "Snacks in the kitchen. Helen's banana bread won't last long." The group dispersed. Hugo helped Mr. Frank to his feet, steadying him as the old man found his cane. "Thank you, son," Mr. Frank said. "You're a good kid." "Just doing what I can." "No." Mr. Frank placed a weathered hand on Hugo's shoulder. "You're doing more than that. You're giving us your time, your patience. That matters." Hugo ducked his head, uncomfortable with the praise. "It's nothing. It's everything," Captain Wallace said, joining them. She was a tall woman, 70s, with kind eyes and a firm handshake. "Most people your age can't look up from their own phones long enough to care about folks like us. But you show up, every week. That says something about your character." Wally nodded. "Your mama raised you right." "She did," Hugo said quietly. "She really did." The veterans headed toward the kitchen, leaving Hugo alone at the table. He sat back down, pulling out his own phone. Lucas could see Hugo's expression shift, the smile fading, the weight returning. Hugo scrolled through his phone, frowning, then set it down and stared at the table. He looked tired. Not physically, but soul-tired. Lucas wanted to go to him, wanted to sit down and say, "What? I'm your father. I abandoned you. But I'm here now. What good would that do?" From the kitchen, Ava appeared with 2 cups of coffee. She set one in front of Hugo and sat down beside him. "You okay?" she asked softly. "Yeah." Hugo wrapped his hands around the cup. "This helps. Being here. They love you. They're good people. So are you." Hugo looked at his mother. "Ma, can I ask you something?" "Anything." "Do you ever—" He paused, searching for words. "Do you ever wonder why God lets things happen the way they do? Like, if he's watching, if he cares, why does he let people hurt each other?" Ava was quiet for a long moment. Lucas leaned forward slightly, straining to hear. "I don't know, baby," Ava said finally. "I wish I had a better answer, but I don't know. You always told me to have faith. And I meant it, but faith doesn't mean pretending to understand. Sometimes it just means—" She touched her cross necklace. "Sometimes it just means holding on when everything's telling you to let go." Hugo nodded slowly. "What happened yesterday?" Ivor continued. "That wasn't God's will. That was one man's choice. One man's fear, or ignorance, or whatever. It was that made him see you as a threat when you're anything but. I'm tired of being seen that way." "I know." They sat together in silence, mother and son, 2 people who had survived everything life threw at them through sheer will and love. Lucas watched them, his throat tight. This is what he'd given up. This bond, this trust, this profound connection between 2 people who'd built a life together despite everything. He'd chosen an empire instead. The break ended. The veterans returned, and Hugo resumed his patient work, helping someone set up Facebook to connect with distant family, showing another how to video call a grandchild, troubleshooting a tablet that wouldn't connect to Wi-Fi. Lucas watched it all. He watched Hugo laugh at Mr. Frank's jokes, watched him explain the same thing 3 times without a trace of irritation, watched him help Captain Wallace print photos from her phone, standing beside her at the ancient printer and celebrating when it finally worked. "Never seen someone so excited about a printer," Captain Wallace said. "It's a victory," Hugo replied. "Those count." Around 7:30 p.m., Dorothy announced they had 15 minutes until closing. The veterans began gathering their things, saying goodbyes. Wally approached Hugo with something in his hand. "Got something for you." It was a small pin, the Marine Corps emblem. "Wally, I can't." "You can and you will." Wally pressed it into Hugo's palm. "You serve these folks like you're one of us. That makes you family." Hugo's eyes reddened. "Thank you. Thank you, son." Lucas watched Hugo carefully pin the emblem to his jacket, his movements reverent, like he understood the weight of what he'd been given. Lucas slipped out before the center closed, crossing the street back to the bus shelter. The evening had turned cold. Streetlights flickered on. A few minutes later, Hugo and Ava emerged from the center. Hugo had his hands in his pockets, the Marine pin visible on his chest. Ava walked beside him, saying something that made him smile. They got into their car and drove away. Lucas stood alone on the sidewalk, invisible in the gathering dark. He'd come here to observe, to gather information, to understand who his son had become. What he'd learned broke him. Hugo was everything Lucas wasn't, patient where Lucas was demanding, humble where Lucas was proud, present where Lucas was always somewhere else, chasing the next deal, the next victory. Ava had raised a good man. Lucas had contributed nothing but his absence. He walked back to his car slowly, the cold seeping through his jacket. By the time he reached it, his hands were shaking, not from the cold, but from the realization settling into his bones. He'd spent 17 years building an empire, and he'd missed the only thing that mattered. Lucas hadn't slept. He'd returned from the Veterans Center and spent the entire night at his desk, staring at reports, making decisions, using every tool at his disposal to fix what he could fix. At 3:47 a.m., he'd drafted an email to the legal team. To Charles Morrison, Chief Legal Officer, subject, Riverside PD contract, immediate action required. Charles, effective immediately, suspend all data sharing and ethics monitoring services with Riverside Police Department, pending full investigation into Officer Daniel Reeves, badge R2847. Flag all previous incidents involving this officer for external review. Additionally, I want Reeves placed on administrative leave through official channels, coordinate with the department's IA division. Make it clear this comes from pattern analysis by our AI system, not personal intervention. Do this quietly. No press. No attribution to me directly. Timeline. I want action within 12 hours. LW, he'd sent it at 4:03 a.m. By 7:30 a.m., he'd made a second call. This one to the Atlas Global Foundation, the company's philanthropic arm. Director Harris, Lucas said when the call connected. I need you to establish a new scholarship program. Full tuition plus stipend for exceptional students from underserved communities. Launch immediately. Sir, we typically have a 6-month development cycle for new programs. You have a week. Make the criteria broad but rigorous. Academic achievement, community service, demonstrated character. I want the first round of applications processed by end of month. Budget? $5 million to start. More if we find the right candidates. A pause. Understood, sir. Any particular reason for the urgency? No particular reason. Lucas lied. It's overdue. He hung up and opened a new document, carefully crafting the scholarship requirements to ensure Hugo would qualify without making it obvious. By 9 a.m., both initiatives were in motion. Lucas sat back in his chair, exhausted but unable to stop. This is what he knew. Systems, influence, money. He couldn't be Hugo's father, couldn't walk into their lives after 17 years of silence. But he could protect. He could provide. He could use his power to smooth the path ahead. It wasn't enough. He knew it wasn't enough. But it was all he had. Eva was folding laundry in the apartment when her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. Telemarketers, scam calls, debt collectors, who somehow kept getting her number despite never having debt. But something made her pick up. Hello. Ms. Carter? A woman's voice, professional and warm. This is Jennifer Liu from Riverside High School's guidance office. Ava's stomach dropped. Is Hugo all right? Oh, yes, he's fine. I'm calling with good news, actually. Hugo has been selected as a potential recipient of the Atlas Global Foundation scholarship. Ava froze, the laundry forgotten. I'm sorry, what? The Atlas Global Foundation. It's a new scholarship program for exceptional students. Hugo's teachers recommended him based on his academic record and community service. If he's interested, there's an interview process. But the scholarship covers full tuition, plus living expenses for college. Atlas Global. The name hit Ava like a physical blow. Ms. Carter, are you there? Yes. Ava's voice sounded distant to her own ears. Yes, I'm here. I'm emailing you the details now. The foundation is moving quickly. They'd like to conduct initial interviews next week. Is Hugo available? I need to discuss it with him. Of course. Just respond to the email once you've talked. This is a wonderful opportunity, Ms. Carter. These scholarships are extremely competitive. Thank you. Ava managed. Thank you for calling. She hung up. Atlas Global. She walked to Hugo's room, to the small desk where he kept his laptop. She opened it and searched. Atlas Global. The results flooded the screen. Tech company. Ethics monitoring systems. Billionaire CEO, Lucas Whitmore. Ava clicked on images. Lucas's face appeared, older now, distinguished, wearing an expensive suit in a professional headshot. But the eyes were the same. The jawline. The expression that said he was always 3 steps ahead of everyone else in the room. Ava's hand went to her mouth. 17 years. Not a word, not a letter, not even a birthday card for Hugo. And now this. She searched. Atlas Global Body Cam footage Riverside. The results confirmed what she already knew in her gut. The ethics monitoring system that had flagged the restaurant incident. It was Lucas's company. His technology. His system. He knew. That evening, after Hugo came home from school, Ava said nothing about the scholarship. She made dinner, chicken, rice, vegetables. They ate mostly in silence, Hugo doing homework at the table afterward while Ava cleaned up. At 9:20 p.m., Hugo went to his room. Ava sat alone in the living room, the lights off, just the glow from the street lamps outside casting shadows across the worn furniture. She pulled out the photo she kept hidden in her dresser drawer, the only one she had of Lucas. It wasn't even a good photo, just a snapshot from a community center event, Lucas standing awkwardly in a crowd, not quite smiling. She'd kept it for Hugo, in case he ever asked. He never had. Ava held the photo in both hands and closed her eyes. "Lord," she whispered, "I need guidance. I don't know if this is you working or if this is something else. I don't know if this scholarship is a blessing or if it's guilt trying to buy absolution." Her voice cracked. Hugo deserves opportunities. He deserves good things, but not like this. Not from a man who couldn't be bothered to know his own son for 17 years. Tears slipped down her cheeks. "I've worked so hard to protect him, to give him everything I could. And it's never been enough. I know it's not enough." She thought about Hugo's face tonight at dinner, tired, withdrawn, still carrying yesterday's humiliation. "But I don't want Lucas's money. I don't want his power. I don't want him thinking he can fix this with a scholarship and clear his conscience." She wiped her eyes. "Show me what to do, please, because I don't trust myself to know the difference between what's best for Hugo and what's just my own pride." The apartment was silent, except for the distant sound of traffic and someone's TV through the walls. No answer came. Ava put the photo back in its hiding place and went to bed, but sleep wouldn't come. Hugo was eating breakfast when his phone buzzed. An email from the school guidance office. He opened it, scanning quickly. "Ma," he said, looking up. "Did you know about this?" Ava's hand stilled over her coffee cup. "About what?" "Some scholarship thing. Atlas Global Foundation. They want to interview me." "I got a call yesterday." Ava said carefully. "I was going to talk to you about it." Hugo frowned. "Atlas Global. Isn't that the company from the news? The one with the body cam footage?" "Yes." "That's weird, right? I mean, timing-wise?" Ava chose her words carefully. "It's a big company, Hugo. They probably have scholarship programs all over the country. Says here the program just launched." Hugo read from his phone. "Interview is at their headquarters downtown, next Tuesday at 4 p.m., with a senior executive mentor." He looked up. "Should I do it?" Ava wanted to say no, wanted to delete the email and pretend it never came. But she looked at her son. Brilliant, hard-working, deserving of every opportunity. And she couldn't let her own history steal his future. "It's your choice," she said. "If you want to do the interview, I'll support you. If you want to ignore it, I'll support that too." Hugo was quiet for a moment. "Full tuition plus stipend, that's everything. That's college without you having to work yourself to death. Don't worry about me. I always worry about you." Hugo set his phone down. "I'll do the interview. What's the worst that can happen?" Ava's chest tightened, but she nodded. "Okay." The Atlas Global building was all glass and steel, rising 42 stories above downtown. Hugo stood on the sidewalk, staring up at it, feeling impossibly small. He'd worn his best outfit. Khakis, a button-down shirt Ava had ironed that morning, the marine pin Wally had given him on his chest. His shoes were old, but polished. "You got this," he muttered to himself. Inside, the lobby was vast and intimidating. Marble floors, modern art, a security desk that looked like a spaceship console. "Hugo Carter," he told the security guard. "I have an interview at 4. The guard checked his tablet. 42nd floor, elevator bank to your left. The elevator was made of glass, offering views of the city as it climbed. Hugo's stomach churned. Partly nerves, partly the height. The 42nd floor was different from what he'd expected. Instead of a corporate maze of cubicles, it was a series of elegant offices and meeting rooms, floor-to-ceiling windows, art that probably cost more than his entire apartment building. A receptionist greeted him. "Mr. Carter, Mr. Whitmore is expecting you. Right, this way." Hugo followed her down a corridor to a corner office. The door was open. And then he saw him. Lucas Whitmore stood beside his desk, dressed in a simple suit, looking somehow both powerful and approachable. He was maybe late 40s, black, with grey touching his temples and intelligent eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. "Hugo," Lucas said, extending his hand. "Thank you for coming." Hugo shook his hand. The grip was firm, but not aggressive. "Thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Whitmore. Please sit." Lucas gestured to a pair of leather chairs by the window, away from the formal desk. Hugo sat, trying not to gawk at the view. The entire city spread below them, the river glinting in the afternoon sun. Lucas sat across from him, maintaining comfortable distance. "Can I get you anything? Water? Coffee?" "I'm okay, thank you." Lucas nodded, studying Hugo with an expression Hugo couldn't quite read. There was something in his eyes, intensity, maybe, or recognition. "So," Lucas began, "this scholarship program is new, as you probably noticed. We're looking for students who demonstrate not just academic excellence, but character. Real integrity." "Yes, sir. Your teachers speak very highly of you. Your guidance counselor said you're one of the most thoughtful students she's encountered." Lucas paused. "But I want to hear from you. Tell me about yourself, Hugo. Not your resume, I've read that. Tell me what matters to you." Hugo hadn't expected this. He'd prepared for questions about his GPA, his career goals, his extracurriculars. "What matters to me?" he repeated. "Yes. What drives you? What do you care about?" Hugo thought about the restaurant, about his mother's face, about Wally and Mr. Frank, and all the veterans who trusted him with their stories. "I care about dignity," he said finally. "About people being seen for who they really are, not who others assume they are." Lucas leaned forward slightly. "Go on." "I volunteer at a veterans center." Hugo continued. "These are people who gave everything for this country. Some of them fought in wars most people my age don't even remember, and now they're just forgotten, invisible. So I try to help them connect with family, learn new technology, just have someone who listens. Why? Because everyone deserves to be seen. To matter." Lucas's expression shifted, something vulnerable crossing his face before he caught himself. "That's a profound way for a 17-year-old to see the world." "My mum taught me that. She always says people's worth isn't determined by their job or their bank account or what neighborhood they live in. It's determined by how they treat others when no one's watching." "Your mother sounds like a remarkable woman." "She is?" Hugo's voice was firm. "She's the best person I know." Lucas was quiet for a moment, his hands clasped in front of him. Hugo, can I ask you something personal? Okay. What happened at the restaurant the other night? How are you processing that? Hugo stiffened. You know about that? Our company's ethics system flagged the incident. I've seen the footage. Lucas's voice was gentle but direct. That was wrong. What that officer did was wrong. Hugo looked out at the city, his jaw tight. It wasn't the first time something like that's happened. Probably won't be the last. That doesn't make it acceptable. No, sir, it doesn't. Hugo turned back to Lucas. But getting angry doesn't change anything. My mom always says the only thing we control is how we respond. So I'm trying to respond by being better. By proving that assumptions are wrong, not through anger, but through how I live. Lucas's eyes glistened. He looked away quickly, composing himself. That takes incredible maturity. Or incredible exhaustion. Hugo surprised himself with the honesty. Sometimes I don't know which. Maybe it's both. They sat in silence for a moment. Let me tell you something, Hugo. Lucas said finally. I built this company from nothing. I was smart, driven, ruthless when I needed to be. I made sacrifices, some I'd make again. Some... He paused. Some I regret every day. What kind of sacrifices? Lucas met his eyes. The kind that cost me the things that actually mattered. Success is easy to measure. Dollars, market share, influence. But integrity, character, the kind of person you become, that's harder. And I'm not sure I got it right. Hugo frowned, surprised by the vulnerability. You created a system that holds police accountable. That's something. Is it? Lucas's voice was sharp, almost pained. Or is it too little, too late? A billionaire's guilty conscience trying to buy redemption. The words hung between them. Hugo didn't know what to say. This wasn't the interview he'd expected. No softball questions about career goals, no formal assessment. This felt like something else entirely. Mr. Whitmore, Hugo said carefully, why am I really here? Lucas looked at him for a long moment. His mouth opened, closed. He seemed to be wrestling with something enormous. You're here, he said finally, because you remind me of what I should have been, and what I failed to become. Hugo felt something shift in the room, some invisible weight pressing down. I don't understand. No. Lucas stood abruptly, walking to the window. His back was to Hugo. No, you wouldn't. Hugo stood too, uncertain. Mr. Whitmore, you should go, Lucas said, his voice strained. You'll receive notification about the scholarship within a week. You've more than earned it. But, please. Lucas didn't turn around. I'm sorry, this was a mistake. Hugo stood there, confused and off balance. Something about this man, about the way he looked at Hugo, about the things he wasn't saying. It felt significant in a way Hugo couldn't name. Thank you for your time, Hugo said quietly. He walked to the door, paused, looked back. Lucas stood at the window, his reflection ghost-like in the glass. His shoulders bent like he was carrying something unbearable. Hugo left, the door closing softly behind him. Lucas pressed his forehead against the cool glass. He'd almost told him. The words had been right there. I'm your father. I abandoned you. I'm sorry, but what right did he have? What right did he have to unburden himself when it would only burden Hugo? His phone buzzed. A text from his legal team. Officer Reeves suspended pending investigation. Should have full review completed in 72 hours. Another text from the foundation. Scholarship approved for Hugo Carter. Notification going out tomorrow. Lucas was fixing things, using his power to smooth the path, to protect from a distance. But Hugo had been right there. Real, alive, brilliant. Everything Lucas wasn't. And Lucas had let him walk away. Again. He stood at the window as the sun set over the city, painting the buildings gold and red, and felt more alone than he'd ever felt in his life. Ava was washing dishes when the evening news began playing on the small TV in the living room. She wasn't really watching, just background noise while Hugo did homework at the kitchen table. Breaking story tonight involving allegations of racial profiling by Riverside Police. Ava's hand stilled in the soapy water. Body camera footage obtained by this station shows an officer confronting a black teenager at a local restaurant without apparent cause. Ma. Hugo's voice was tight. Ma, turn it up. Ava dried her hands and grabbed the remote, her heart already sinking. The footage played on screen. The officer's body cam view entering Maria's restaurant. Approaching their booth, Hugo's face filling the frame. You planning to pay for your meal? Ava watched her son, watched herself, relive their humiliation on the evening news. The incident occurred last Thursday at Maria's family restaurant. The subject, identified only as a minor, had already paid for his meal. Sources say the footage was flagged by an ethics monitoring system operated by Atlas Global, the tech company founded by billionaire Lucas Whitmore. The screen cut to a photo of Lucas in a suit, standing at some corporate event. Ava's breath caught. Atlas Global has declined to comment on how the footage was obtained or leaked to media. However, sources within the company suggest it was part of a pattern of misconduct by the officer involved, who has since been placed on administrative leave. They put it on the news, Hugo said, his voice hollow. Everyone's going to see it. Everyone at school, at work. But Ava barely heard him. She was staring at Lucas's face on the screen. Atlas Global's ethics system had flagged the footage. Atlas Global had offered Hugo a scholarship. Lucas had interviewed Hugo personally. The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. Ma? Hugo was looking at her. You okay? I need... Ava's voice came out strangled. I need a minute. She walked quickly to her bedroom and closed the door. Her hands shook as she pulled out her phone and searched. Lucas Whitmore age. Born April 15th, 1977. 48 years old. She did the math. He would have been 30 when Hugo was born. She searched. Lucas Whitmore family. The results were sparse. No public information about spouse or children. Whitmore is known for keeping his personal life extremely private. Ava sat on the edge of her bed, her chest tight. He'd known. When he interviewed Hugo, he'd known exactly who he was. And he'd said nothing. Hugo couldn't stop thinking about the interview with Lucas Whitmore. Something about it had felt wrong. Not threatening, but strange. Personal in a way that didn't make sense. You remind me of what I should have been. What did that mean? At 10:30 p.m., unable to sleep, Hugo opened his laptop and searched. Lucas Whitmore. The usual results appeared. Forbes articles, business profiles, photos from conferences and product launches. Hugo scrolled, not sure what he was looking for. Then he saw it. A photo from a tech diversity initiative from 18 years ago. Lucas standing in a community center, younger, less polished. And in the background, barely visible, but unmistakable, his mother. Hugo enlarged the photo. It was her, younger, smiling, standing near a group of workshop participants. His heart began to pound. He searched, Lucas Whitmore Riverside Community Center 2007. A few archived news articles appeared. Local tech entrepreneur volunteers at community workshop. MIT graduate teaches coding to underserved communities. Hugo calculated. 18 years ago. He was 17 now. He opened a new search. Lucas Whitmore born. April 15th, 1977. Hugo pulled up his own birth certificate from the files his mother kept in a folder in the desk drawer. He'd seen it before. His name, his mother's name, his birth date. Father unknown. But now he looked at the date, the hospital, the city. He searched, Lucas Whitmore Education MIT graduation. Graduated MIT 2005. Remained in Cambridge for graduate research until 2007, then moved to Riverside. Hugo's hands were shaking. He opened Instagram, searched Lucas Whitmore's public profile, scrolled through old photos. There, a photo from 8 years ago. Lucas at some charity event. The caption mentioned his birthday. April 15th. Hugo opened his own birth certificate again. His birthday. Yesterday. The same date, 17 years later, in the same month. He looked at Lucas's photos, really looked. The shape of his eyes, the line of his jaw, the way he stood. Hugo walked to the bathroom mirror and stared at his own reflection. The resemblance was undeniable once you were looking for it. No. Hugo whispered. No, no, no. He returned to his laptop with trembling hands and searched Lucas Whitmore son. Nothing. Lucas Whitmore children. Nothing. Lucas Whitmore family scandal. Nothing. Because Lucas had kept them a secret, had erased them from his story entirely. Hugo's phone was in his hand before he'd consciously decided. He texted his mother. We need to talk. Now. Iva appeared in Hugo's doorway 30 seconds later, her expression already knowing. You figured it out, she said quietly. Is it true? Hugo's voice cracked. Is Lucas Whitmore my father? Iva closed the door behind her and sat on the edge of Hugo's bed. She looked suddenly older, exhausted. Yes. The word hung in the air like a verdict. Hugo felt the room tilt. How long have you known he was involved? With the footage, the scholarship? I suspected when I got the call about the scholarship. I was certain when I saw him on the news tonight. And you didn't tell me? I was trying to figure out what to do, how to protect you. Protect me from what? Hugo's voice rose. From the truth? From knowing my own father? He couldn't finish the sentence. Ava's eyes filled with tears. Baby, why didn't you tell me? All these years, why didn't you tell me who he was? Because he didn't want to be found. Because he made it clear he wanted nothing to do with us. Ava's voice broke. I sent back his money, every check, because I wasn't going to let him buy his way out of being a father while still sleeping at night. Does he know? About me? He knows now. He must have seen the footage, recognized us both. Ava wiped her eyes. That's why the scholarship appeared. Why he interviewed you personally. He's trying to... I don't know what he's trying to do. Hugo stood, pacing his small room. He sat across from me, looked me in the eye, talked about integrity and character and sacrifices he regrets. His laugh was bitter. And he didn't say anything, didn't tell me who he was. Hugo, I'm going to see him. What? No. Hugo, it's almost 11 at night. I don't care. Hugo grabbed his jacket. He wants to play anonymous benefactor? Fine. But he doesn't get to hide anymore. He doesn't get to feel good about himself while pretending I don't exist. Hugo, please. But Hugo was already at the door. I need to hear him say it. I need to look him in the eye and hear him admit what he did. Iva stood, her face anguished. Let me drive you. No. Hugo's voice was firm. I need to do this alone. Lucas was still at his office at 11:15 p.m., staring at the news coverage on his computer. The leaked footage was everywhere. Cable news, social media, trending on Twitter. He'd ordered an internal investigation into who leaked it, but he already knew the answer didn't matter. The truth was out. His private phone rang. The security desk. Mr. Whitmore, there's a young man here to see you. Says it's urgent. Name is Hugo Carter. Lucas's blood went cold. Let him up. He stood, walked to the window, then back to his desk. His hands were shaking. The elevator chimed. Footsteps in the hallway. Hugo appeared in the doorway. His face was a mask of controlled fury. Hi, Dad. The word was like a knife. Lucas couldn't speak. couldn't move. Hugo stepped into the office, leaving the door open behind him. That's what I'm supposed to call you, right? Dad? Father? Or should I stick with Mr. Whitmore, since that's what you preferred during our interview? Hugo, when were you going to tell me? Hugo's voice was dangerously quiet. After the scholarship? After graduation? Or were you planning to just watch from a distance forever, using your money and your power to clear the path, while pretending you didn't abandon me 17 years ago? Lucas found his voice. I didn't know how to what? How to be honest? How to be a father? Hugo stepped closer. You created an entire ethics system to hold other people accountable, but you couldn't even tell your own son who you were. I was trying to protect you. From what? Hugo's voice rose. From having a father? From the truth? Or were you protecting yourself? The accusation struck home. You're right, Lucas said quietly. I was protecting myself. Finally, some honesty. Hugo's eyes were bright with unshed tears. Why? Why did you leave? Lucas moved to his desk, gripping the edge. I was 30 years old. I was about to launch Atlas Global. Everything I'd worked for was finally happening. And then your mother told me she was pregnant. So you ran. I thought... Lucas's voice cracked. I thought I was choosing the rational thing. I told myself a child deserved a father who could be present, and I knew I couldn't be. I was going to build something that mattered, something that would change the world. And we didn't matter enough. No, you mattered too much. Lucas looked at Hugo, his eyes raw. I was terrified. Terrified I'd fail you. Terrified I'd resent you for costing me my dream. So I made a choice. I walked away and told myself it was for the best. It wasn't. I know that now. Hugo laughed bitterly. You know that now. Great. 17 years too late, but at least you know. I've thought about you every day. Don't. Hugo's voice was sharp. Don't you dare say that. If you'd thought about me, you would have found me. You're one of the richest men in the country. You could have found us any time you wanted. Lucas had no defense. You're right. I know I'm right. Hugo's control finally broke. My mum worked herself to exhaustion raising me alone. She never complained, never said a bad word about you, even though you deserved it. She taught me everything good I know while you were up here in your tower building your empire. Tears streamed down Hugo's face now, and he didn't bother wiping them away. I needed a father, not a scholarship, not a mentor, a father. His voice cracked. And you chose money. You chose power. You chose yourself. Lucas's own eyes filled. I'm sorry, Hugo, I am so sorry. Your sorry doesn't change anything. It doesn't give me back 17 years. It doesn't take away all the times I wondered what was wrong with me, that my own father didn't want me. Nothing is wrong with you. You're... Lucas's voice broke. You're everything I'm not. You're kind, patient, humble. You have more integrity in your little finger than I've managed in my entire life. I learned that from Mum, not from you. The words landed like blows. Hugo wiped his face roughly. I came here because I needed to know why. I needed to hear you say it. But now that I have... He shook his head. It doesn't make it better. It just makes me sad. He turned toward the door. Hugo, please. Don't contact me. Don't send scholarship letters. Don't use your systems to fix my problems. Hugo's voice was hollow. Just leave us alone, like you've been doing. Hugo. But Hugo was already walking away, his footsteps echoing down the empty corridor. Lucas stood frozen in his office, the silence crushing. His phone buzzed. A news alert. Breaking. Anonymous source leaks details about Atlas Global CEO's connection to viral police incident. It was starting. The empire he'd chosen over his son was about to come for him. Lucas spent the night at his office, watching his carefully constructed world begin to crack. By 3 a.m., journalists had pieced together the timeline. Atlas Global's ethics system had flagged footage involving the CEO's son, a son no one knew existed. The scholarship program had launched suspiciously fast. Lucas had personally interviewed Hugo. Social media exploded with speculation, outrage, accusations of conflict of interest, cover-ups, abuse of power. Billionaire uses company resources to help secret son. Where was Lucas Whitmore for 17 years? CEO resigns from police oversight after family caught in viral incident. The board started calling at 6 a.m. Lucas ignored them all. At 7:30 a.m., his assistant appeared in the doorway. She looked like she hadn't slept either. "Sir, the board has called an emergency meeting for 2 p.m. They're demanding your presence." "Cancel my morning." "It's already clear, sir, but—" She hesitated. "Mr. Whitmore, there's someone here to see you. She doesn't have an appointment, but she says it's urgent." "Who?" "Ava Carter." Lucas's heart stopped. "Send her in." Ava entered wearing her hotel uniform. She'd come straight from her morning shift. Her face was composed, but her eyes were hard. Lucas stood. "Ava, sit down, Lucas." The command in her voice was absolute. Lucas sat. Ava remained standing, her purse clutched in both hands. 18 years. You couldn't pick up a phone, couldn't write a letter, couldn't even send a birthday card. But the moment you see him on a video, suddenly you care. It's not like that, then what is it like? Her voice was controlled but sharp. "Explain it to me. Explain how you get to waltz back into our lives with your money and your power and your guilt, and somehow that's supposed to make up for everything." Lucas couldn't meet her eyes. "It doesn't make up for anything. No, it doesn't." Ava stepped closer. "Hugo came home last night devastated. Not because of what that officer did, not because the video is everywhere, because his father looked him in the eye and lied. Again. I was trying to protect him. From what?" Ava's voice rose. "From knowing he has a father who's a coward? Too late, Lucas. He knows." The word coward hung in the air. "You're right," Lucas said quietly. "That's exactly what I am. Don't do that. Don't sit there and agree with me so you can feel noble about accepting criticism." Ava's voice shook. "I don't want your self-flagellation. I want you to be honest. Why now? Why did you really set up that scholarship? Why did you interview him?" Lucas finally looked up at her. "Because I saw him on that footage, and I realized what I'd given up. I saw the man he's becoming, the man your mother raised, and I couldn't stay away." "So you manipulated the situation to get close to him without having to actually be his father?" "Yes." The admission seemed to take something out of Lucas. He slumped in his chair. "I told myself I was helping, protecting him, using my resources for good." His laugh was hollow. "But you're right. I was just finding another way to avoid the truth. Another way to feel like I was doing something without actually having to do the hard thing." Ava's expression didn't soften. "The hard thing is being there, day after day, year after year, when there's no glory in it, no victory, just the slow work of showing up and loving someone consistently." "I know. Do you? Because from where I'm standing, you still don't get it." Ava leaned forward, her hands on Lucas's desk. "Hugo doesn't need your empire. He doesn't need your money or your connections or your guilty conscience. He needs a father who chooses him, actually chooses him, not as a project, not as a way to feel better about your past mistakes, but as a person who matters more than anything else. I don't know how to be that." "Then learn." Ava straightened. "But don't you dare use him as a way to feel good about yourself while keeping yourself safe from the hard parts." Lucas stood, his face anguished. "Tell me what to do. Please, tell me how to fix this." "I can't tell you how to fix this, Lucas. That's not my job anymore." Ava's voice was tired now, the anger draining into something sadder. "I did my job. I raised a good man despite you. Now you have to figure out how to earn the right to know him. Ava, I don't want your money. Never did. If you try to send us anything, I'll send it back. Again. She turned toward the door. And Lucas, stay away from us until you figure out who you actually want to be, not who you want us to think you are. She walked out, leaving Lucas alone in his office with the weight of 18 years of failure pressing down on him. At 2 p.m., Lucas sat at the head of the conference table surrounded by Atlas Global's board of directors. 12 faces, some sympathetic, most calculating. The chairman, Gerald Morrison, a silver-haired man who'd invested in Atlas Global from the beginning, spoke first. Lucas, we need to discuss next steps. The media. Attention is significant. Questions about conflict of interest, abuse of company resources, your personal judgment. I'll resign. The room went silent. Excuse me? Gerald said. I'll resign as CEO, effective immediately. Lucas's voice was calm. I'll make the announcement this afternoon. Lucas, that's not necessary. One of the board members began. Yes, it is. Lucas looked around the table. I used company resources for personal reasons. I conducted an interview under false pretenses. I compromised the integrity of the ethics system by having a direct personal stake in one of the cases. We can manage the PR. This isn't about PR. Lucas's voice was sharp. This is about the fact that I built this company on accountability and ethics, and then I violated both when it suited me. Gerald leaned back. What will you do? I don't know yet. Lucas stood. But I'm done hiding. I'm done using power as a substitute for actually doing what's right. He walked to the door, paused, looked back. For 18 years I chose this company over my son. I told myself it was the right choice, the logical choice. I was wrong. His voice cracked. And now I have to figure out how to live with that. He left them sitting in stunned silence. Lucas's assistant sent the media advisory at 4 p.m. Atlas Global CEO Lucas Whitmore will make a major announcement at 6 p.m. today. Live stream available on company website. By 5:45 p.m., every major news outlet was covering it. Speculation ran wild. Resignation, scandal, company restructuring. Ava saw the notification on her phone. She was home, sitting on the couch beside Hugo. They'd spent the day in careful silence, both processing, both hurting. He's making an announcement, she said quietly. Hugo looked at the screen. Think he'll lie? I don't know. They turned on the TV. Every news channel was covering it live. At 5:58 p.m., Lucas walked into Atlas Global's press conference room, a stark space with the company logo behind a simple podium. He looked different, older, tired, but also strangely at peace. Lucas stepped to the podium. Cameras flashed. The room was packed, journalists, executives, employees, all waiting. Thank you for coming, Lucas began. His voice was steady. I'm going to make a statement, and then I'll take questions. He pulled out a folder and set it on the podium. But he didn't look at it. 2 weeks ago, Atlas Global's ethics monitoring system flagged body camera footage showing a Riverside police officer confronting a teenager without cause. The system did exactly what it was designed to do: identify misconduct and escalate it for review. He paused, his hands gripping the podium. The teenager in that footage is my son, Hugo Carter. He's 17 years old, and until 2 weeks ago, I had not seen him or spoken to him since the day I walked out of his mother's life 18 years ago. The room erupted. Cameras clicked furiously. Reporters shouted questions. Lucas raised a hand. Please, let me finish. The noise subsided. When I was 30 years old, I was on the verge of launching this company. I had devoted everything to building Atlas Global, my time, my energy, my entire identity. And then Ava Carter told me she was pregnant. His voice wavered, but held. I told her I couldn't be a father. I told myself it was the rational choice, that a child deserved better than an absent, distracted parent, that I was doing the noble thing by walking away. Lucas looked directly at the camera. I was lying to myself. The truth is, I was scared. Scared of failing. Scared of being vulnerable. Scared of loving something more than my ambition. So I chose the company. I chose power. I chose myself. He pulled out a flash drive from his pocket. I'm releasing the complete, unedited body camera footage today. Not the version that's been on the news. Everything. Including the parts where Officer Reeves was disciplined, where the restaurant owner defended Hugo, where my son showed more grace under pressure than I've shown in my entire life. He set the drive on the podium. I want to be clear about what I did wrong. I used company resources to investigate my son without his knowledge. I created a scholarship program designed to benefit him specifically. I interviewed him under false pretenses. I manipulated the situation to get close to him without having to actually be his father. A reporter called out, "Are you resigning?" "Yes, I'm resigning as CEO effective immediately. The board has accepted my resignation." Another wave of noise. But more importantly, Lucas continued, his voice rising, I'm here to publicly apologize to my son. He looked directly at the camera again, as if he could see through it to wherever Hugo was watching. Hugo, I am so profoundly sorry for leaving, for staying away, for trying to buy my way back into your life instead of earning it, for every birthday I missed, every milestone I wasn't there for, every moment your mother had to be both parents because I was too cowardly to be one. His voice cracked. You deserved better. You deserve better. And I don't know if I can ever be the father you should have had. But I want to try. Not as a billionaire, not as a CEO, just as a man trying to do the right thing. Probably too late, but trying anyway. Tears ran down his face now. He didn't wipe them away. To Ava Carter, you were right about everything. You raised a remarkable son despite me. You had every right to keep me away. If you choose to do so now, I'll respect that. But I hope... His voice broke. I hope someday you might give me the chance to prove I can be better than the man who walked away. He stepped back from the podium. I'll take questions now. Hugo sat frozen on the couch, tears streaming down his face. Ava's hand found his, squeezed tight. On screen, Lucas fielded questions with brutal honesty. No spin, no PR damage control. Just a man accepting full responsibility for his failures. Dutard, you regret building Atlas Global? I regret the cost. I regret what I sacrificed to build it. But I can't regret the work itself. It's helped hold people accountable when institutions failed. I just wish I'd held myself to the same standard. What will you do now? I don't know. I need to figure out who I am without the company, without the empire. Maybe I'll discover I'm nothing. Maybe I'll discover something better. Will your son forgive you? Lucas paused, his face raw. That's not for me to decide, and honestly, I'm not sure he should. Forgiveness isn't automatic. It has to be earned. And I have 18 years of absence to answer for. Hugo watched his father be honest in a way Hugo had never expected. It didn't erase anything, didn't fix anything, but it was something. Ma, Hugo whispered, what do we do? Ava looked at her son's tear-streaked face. We take our time, we figure out what we need, and we don't let anyone rush us. Even if he's trying. Especially if he's trying. Ava wiped Hugo's tears with her thumb. Real change takes time to prove. We'll know it when we see it. On the TV, the press conference was ending. Lucas walked away from the podium, no longer a CEO, just a man carrying the weight of his choices. The screen cut to news anchors discussing the stunning admission, the unprecedented confession. Hugo turned off the TV. In the silence of their apartment, mother and son sat together, the future uncertain, but at least now built on truth instead of silence. Days after Lucas's press conference passed slowly. Media trucks camped outside their apartment. Hugo stayed home from school, overwhelmed. Ava took leave to be with him. Lucas didn't call, didn't text. Only silence from that glass tower downtown. "Do you think he meant it?" Hugo asked one evening. Ava poured tea carefully. "I think he meant it when he said it. Whether he can actually do it, that's different." "How long do we wait?" "As long as we need to." At the Veterans Center, nothing changed. Hugo was still just Hugo, patient, kind, helping with technology. Captain Wallace asked, "How are you holding up?" "Ask me in a few months." 6 weeks later, Hugo arrived at the Veterans Center. Dorothy's expression was strange. "We have a new volunteer tonight." Hugo walked in and froze. Lucas Whitmore sat at a corner table, wearing jeans, wiping surfaces with a cleaning cloth. "Hi, Hugo," Lucas said quietly. "I'm not here to talk. Dorothy said you volunteer here. They could use extra hands, so I'm here to work." "You're here to clean tables?" "If that's what's needed." For 2 hours, they worked separately. Hugo taught technology. Lucas cleaned bathrooms, swept floors, took out trash. "Why are you really here?" Hugo asked finally. "Because you're here." Every Thursday, Lucas arrived at 5 p.m. sharp. He cleaned, organized, did unglamorous tasks. He didn't seek out Hugo, didn't force conversation. He simply showed up. Week after week. Month after month. The veterans gradually accepted him as Lucas, the guy who refilled paper towels and scrubbed the coffee maker. "Your old man's persistent," Wally commented. "Most volunteers disappear. He's been here months." "He's trying," Hugo acknowledged. "The hard way." Meanwhile, Lucas's Police Accountability Foundation quietly made impact, but his name rarely appeared in coverage. 3 months after his resignation, the foundation held its opening ceremony. Ava and Hugo attended. The Veterans Center was hosting a community technology workshop, Hugo's project. He'd spent weeks planning it, recruiting volunteers, securing equipment. When he arrived early to set up, Lucas was already there, arranging chairs in neat rows. "Thanks for coming early," Hugo said. "Of course." Lucas looked up. "Where do you need me?" "Registration table." "On it." They'd developed an easier rhythm over 6 months of Thursdays. Not quite father and son, but something like colleagues, people who shared space and purpose. As attendees arrived, elderly residents, families, young adults, Hugo watched his father work the registration table. Lucas greeted each person warmly, helped elderly participants find seats, knelt to talk to children at eye level. No trace of the CEO who'd once commanded boardrooms. Just a man being genuinely helpful. During Hugo's presentation on digital literacy, Lucas sat in the back row, attentive and respectful. When Hugo invited questions, an elderly woman raised her hand. "Young man, where did you learn to be so patient?" Hugo smiled. "From my mother. She taught me everyone deserves dignity and time." He didn't mention Lucas, but when their eyes met across the room, something unspoken passed between them. Acknowledgement, understanding. During break, Wally approached Lucas with characteristic directness. "Lucas, got someone I want you to meet properly." Wally gestured to the veterans by the coffee station. "Everyone, this is Lucas. He's been volunteering 6 months now. Does the dirty work, never complains. But more importantly, he's Hugo's father." The room quieted. Hugo tensed. Mr. Frank spoke first. "We know. Figured it out weeks ago. You two got the same stubborn chin." Laughter broke the tension. Captain Wallace stepped forward. "What we want to know is, are you going to keep showing up?" Lucas understood the real question, not just to the center, but to Hugo's life. "Yes, ma'am," he said firmly. "For as long as I'm welcome." And even if I'm not, I'll still try. Good answer. She extended her hand. Welcome to the family, then. Not the one you're born into, but the one you choose by showing up. As the workshop ended, Hugo and Lucas cleaned up together. Their established routine. That went well, Lucas said, stacking chairs. Yeah, really well. Hugo stopped, gathering courage. Lucas, would you want to have dinner with me and my mum? Actually sit down together? Lucas froze. Does Ava want that? I asked her. She said she'd consider it, if you were willing. I'm willing. Lucas's voice cracked. God, I'm willing. The following Thursday, Ava came inside the center instead of just dropping Hugo off. She was talking to Lucas, not arguing, just talking about ordinary things. Hugo watched them. They weren't a family yet. Maybe never in the traditional sense. But they were something. When the session ended, Ava spoke as they walked to the parking lot. Lucas, we're having dinner Sunday. Nothing fancy. Just us at home. She paused. Would you like to join us? Lucas stopped walking. His eyes filled with tears. I would. I really would. 6 o'clock. Ava said. Don't be late. I won't. They parted ways. But before driving off, Hugo rolled down his window. Lucas. His father looked up. See you Sunday. Lucas nodded, unable to speak. As Ava drove away, Hugo felt something he hadn't felt in months. Not quite forgiveness, not quite wholeness, but something like peace. The road ahead was long. There would be difficult conversations, old wounds to navigate, trust to rebuild one day at a time. But for the first time, Hugo believed they might actually make it. Not back to what should have been. Forward to what could still be. Thank you for being here. If something in this story stayed with you, I'd love to see you again. Subscribe, and tomorrow I'll bring you another story crafted with heart.